Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending. This is Screen In, Not Out. How to hire people based on what they're good at. So, I want to start, as I always do, with a very quick round of introductions. For example, I'm Angela Fowler. I'm an accessibility consultant, the founder and CEO of Real Life Access, co creator of Hiring for Champions, and griller of the best tri-tip on God's planet. Daniel.
I am Daniel Hodges. I am president and co-founder of Pieces of Me Foundation, the other co-author for Hiring for Champions, and someone who enjoys a good burger. So I'll take one of Angela's tri-tips and ground it up, and then we're good.
Poor thing. Kathleen, save us! Save us!
There's always a lot of good talk about food and beverage on our calls, and I really appreciate that because you two are hiring experts, so you know how to hire for good beverages and food. How's that? You're great at that.
Well, except maybe for Dan, he'd grind up a tri-tip.
Okay, all righty, good. All of that is making me hungry and hungry for how to hire for merit and keep the best people, right?
Yes.
Yep, exactly. So, Kathleen, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Kathleen Caldwell, founder of C-Suite Network's Women's Coaching and Consulting Council. Hey, I'm all things coaching and helping companies to hire the best, but I work with great consultants and partners like you, Angela, and you, Daniel, and growing a global community to make business accessible is so important to me. Hence, why I am so delighted to support the two of you today, as always.
Well, thank you.
Right,
Yes,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. Yeah,
Kathleen is the coach for the coach who needs a coach.
thank you. Thank you.
All right. So there's at least two people here, guests of honor. Jose, go ahead and go first. Just give us a quick intro if you want. Or not.
Angela, why don't we jump in and talk about
He might still be
the
on
job
mute.
application problem, right? Because there's a lot of problems and
Absolutely.
solutions.
Well, there are, and the good news is there's a lot of solutions. So in previous job searches, you don't really know a process until you become intimately involved. So I'm filling out an application. Easy apply on LinkedIn. It's what everybody does, right? And I come up with a question such as, how many years of work experience do you have using Figma? Now, a little background. Figma, excuse me, Figma is a visual design software. It is how you communicate. It's how you communicate and collaborate on visual designs with other teammates. And so basically, it's a communication tool. Figma is also 100% inaccessible to screen reader users. I, as a totally blind person, am a screen reader user. Therefore, the true answer to that question is 0. I've never used Figma in my life. Which, from the hiring process perspective, is disqualifying, right? She'd never use Figma, get out of here. Throw that application in the round file. But here's the reality of the situation. I am a very good user experience designer. I can put myself in the chair of the user, in the chair of a blind user, a deaf user, a user with a cognitive disability, and a user with two toddlers climbing on their heads, among other use cases, and say, okay, how can I design this workflow to work best for them so that they can use it without having to think about it? And I can communicate that design verbally to other people or using prototypes that AI can help me generate. And I tell this story not to bemoan my own job search frustrations. This is not the point. I tell this story to highlight the gap between the hiring process and the purpose for which people are hired. So for example, why would you hire a user experience designer? What's the point of that role? What is that role's purpose? Is it to use Figma? Or is it to come up with the best ways to design your product so that your customers can use it? And to that end, what do you want that person to be able to do? What skills does that person need to have? What is more important? The ability to use a mouse or the ability to empathetically design for different use cases of individuals? And sometimes those two skills exist in the same person. Oftentimes they don't because, well, they don't need to exist in the same person. So, so what can we do about this? Because this is not just an Angela problem. If it was, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. Turnover right now is higher than it's ever been. It's costing companies more money than it ever has. You know, it costs the statistics are staggering in terms of how much money it costs to train and replace an employee. And one of the chief causes of turnover is misalignment, which is to say, hiring people for the wrong role. Hiring them based on one criteria, and then expecting them to perform based on another. Or hiring them and not allowing them to do the things that they are best at. This isn't just a problem for applicants, it's a problem for employers, it's a problem for companies. And if we take the user experience design example to its logical conclusion, it's a problem for customers as well. So it's an equal opportunity annoyer. It affects everybody equally. So I want to take a pause here. I'm going to turn it over to Dan, um, and he's going to actually go into how we solve this and how can real life access help you solve this problem, because we're not here to complain about problems. Complaining about problems does nobody any good unless a solution comes out of that complaint.
Yeah. So, and the work that you do with your company and what work that I do with mine, we deal with this a lot. And the the problem here is threefold. If you look at imprecise application or interview questions, really it could have three detrimental effects. The one you touched on already is that it can bring the wrong person in. The second is that it can cause the right person to self-select out. And
Mm-hmm.
the third is that there's probably no more dangerous territory when it comes to opening oneself up to litigation in the onboarding process for an employer than having screening criteria that is off. When it comes to opening yourself up to any kind of discrimination lawsuit, this is the bulk of where the danger lies. So it's critically important to get this right. And having said that, the prompt that you started with about the particular piece of software, I found two distinct issues with it. The first you covered, which was focusing on a tool rather than focusing on a process, or more importantly, a result. The result is what you should care about. Can you deliver this product? If you can, then we can go backwards and look at the workflow. The other thing, too, that I think is important is when you're asking, how long have you done X, Y, or Z? That's actually missing the point. The more important point is, can you do this well? And can you do this with a growing degree of proficiency? I had an old friend who used to say something to the effect, if you can have 5 years of experience, or you can have 1 year of experience 5 times. And the point of that is, just because you've done something for X amount of time doesn't mean you grew. It doesn't mean you got better in the process, or that you actually became good at it. You might not have been good at it to start with. You may have just been good enough to dig your heels in and stay for 20 years. That's not what an employer wants. They want someone who is on a progressive upward trajectory toward mastery. That's what you're trying to get at there. And asking a question such as, how long have you been doing this, doesn't get there. It just doesn't. So that's why we're having a conversation about asking the right questions, which starts with focusing on the right things. So in this case, what is the objective that you want to do through this hiring process? You want someone who can create, an artful product. You want someone who can effectively communicate with customers, or you want someone who can lead a team, whatever the case may be. It's critically important to separate the what from the how. Because when you crystallize the what, then you understand that there may be multiple different pathways of achieving that how that will open you up to the right candidates. And then the third angle of that triangle is understanding why. Why do we need a person to do this? What is the overall value to the team or to the company that we are achieving through this process? And when you come to understand how those three components in that triangle work together, then you're much more capable of finding the right person without drowning yourself in applications, because you can ask the right questions, you can ask for the right work samples, you can create a compelling application process that will get you the information you need without being bombarded with a bunch of irrelevant data that looks good but really just is nothing more than a bunch of busy work disguised as useful research.
Yep. How does it help you to have 200 applications? 100 of them are not, don't qualify for only one position.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this before we logged on. A lot of these entry-level positions must be able to use Microsoft Word. Well, yeah, you have to be proficient in creating documents.
Yeah.
Does it really matter if what program you're used to using? That's an easily transferable skill. And also, isn't it kind of a no-brainer if you're doing something involving any technology that you have to be able to create some sort of document? And similar now, 2025, must be proficient with Zoom. Yeah. Am I going to list being proficient with Zoom on a resume? No, because it's one of those no-duh things. So you take, when you include things like that, is you get a bunch of people saying, well, I'm good with Word, I'm good with Zoom, and maybe miss the completely necessary part of the application of must have must love to work with people or must be able to engage in an audience or whatever. The critical thing gets drowned out by the irrelevant stuff. And that's why you get a bunch of applications that don't align with what you're actually looking for.
And the reality is we advocate for making the application process a little bit more difficult for people.
We do. We absolutely do. And I know this from being a team leader myself, leading my own organization for the last 6 years. We are in the process with Pieces of Me of raising the bar significantly when it comes to being a board member. And I've talked about the joys of hiring someone to do something with no pay in previous webinars. But in this one, I'm just going to say we are raising the bar. We are asking far more of people before they even have a chance to sit on my board, and it's going to result in better candidates. It's going to result in a better team, and it's going to separate the people who are ready to take that step from a bunch of people who have great intentions but not the right skill set at this time.
And I want to address the subject of tools because I can hear y'all thinking. And what y'all are thinking is, this company has been using this tool for 10 years. It would be a monumental hassle to change it. And you don't have to. You simply have to be a little creative in how you assign teams. So, for example, going back to the Figma example, because it's a handy example to go back to because it covers everything. There are visual designers who are super proficient with Figma and who can take a good user experience design and incorporate it into Figma and make it pretty better than I ever could, even if I could see. So if you combine a good UX designer with a good visual designer, then you really have a hybrid that's the best of both worlds. And that's transferable to other things too, right? Well, maybe you can't, maybe you're not familiar with Microsoft Word. Okay, but does that need to be disqualifying if the person can create the document somewhere else and have that and import that document into Word, or swap tasks with somebody else that can do it?
Yeah, and that gets into a conversation about job crafting, where a lot of times when we talk about redelegating tasks, people think of this as being a unilateral process. Oh, you're going to take the visual things off of Angela's plate and put them on somebody else's. That's not fair. Wait a minute. No, because we're going to take the other task that the other, your friend is going to have to do. And we're going to say, wait a minute. Angela is going to take A, B, and C that you hate off of your plate, and she's going to take those things over because she's good at that. And the other person's going to deal with Angela's visual stuff. And what do you have there? You have better workflow, you have better productivity, you have better efficiency, better job satisfaction, less turnover, all because you said what matters is what the team accomplishes, not who performs a specific task is by virtue of getting the entire project done. We're going to let go of these rigid ideas of this person has to do A, B, C, and that person has to do X, Y, Z, and say, wait a minute, who cares so long as everybody has the workflow that works for them and is satisfied with what has been put before them. And it sounds like a lot of work. It's not.
Yeah,
Literally.
once you get used to it, it becomes, and again, real life access can help you there. We can consult, we can advise you on how to embed flexibility into a hiring process. Because
Yeah.
processes isn't easy, right? It's it can be very difficult because it's one thing to say this process doesn't work, we need to burn it down, but you also need to replace it with something, and that's where real life access can help. Let's get some input from the audience. What are y'all thinking out there?
Guam Rule, jump in. And folks, if you would like to also put in the chat, feel free, put in the chat questions you have. One thing that came in the chat, folks, is, okay, so what are how can we do this? What are some strategies you recommend to be able to counter some of these problems?
Well,
Love it.
I think for me, it starts off by understanding on the macro level what is the team most focused on accomplishing. And then you go down another layer and say, okay, to accomplish these team goals, we have, 1 through 8 or whatever particular objectives that tasks that need to be performed. And then you start there by saying, okay, we know now what's on the table for the team. Now we can start assigning tasks based on skills and talents and interest rather than some arbitrary construct of, well, they hold this position, therefore they have to be able to do this. And I know it sounds like a lot of work. I'm telling you, it's a couple of hours and it can save you tenfold hours in productivity over the long haul.
Yep. And it involves really a more personalized application process. When I finally did get a job in 2021, it wasn't the role that I initially applied for. But they interviewed me and they got to know me. We had a really, really good conversation. And they got to know what I could bring to the table. And they said, wait a minute, she's not the person we want for this engineering role that she applied for, but we want her to come onto our team and do this, and this. So they called back and said, okay, we want you to apply for this role. And I applied for it and I got it. So because they were flexible, because they got to know me and they said, okay, holistically, where does she fit into the grand scheme of things? I got a job that was more aligned with what I was good at. They were able to have other people do the hardcore engineering stuff that I could do it, but it's not my it's not my genius. Let's put it that way. And
I think, go ahead.
and I
Go
think
ahead.
that the team was ultimately a lot more productive as a result.
I think as the world just gets faster and faster and we all feel compressed for time and for energy, the temptation to skip past the more human element of hiring and retaining people, it becomes more apparent to skip those things, and it becomes all the more important not to. So when we're building teams, I've learned, again, this personally, it is so important to ask those basic questions. Who are you as a person?
Yeah.
Who, what kind of energy, what kind of character, what kind of passion are you going to bring to the table? And then why do you want to work here? What about this business, this organization draws you to having this conversation with me right now? And if the answer to that is, well, it's just another job, then think twice about that because they're going to jump. And if the answer to that is because I love this company's mission, or I use this product or service in my own home and therefore I want to get it out to the world, or something about that answer is unique to your business, then try to avoid the temptation to gloss over that or to devalue that. Because when you get the who and the why correct, that's going to give you a lot of latitude when it comes to finding the right alignment when it comes to the what and the how, because you're gonna be able to find the right skill set within that person to put them somewhere productive, much like that company did with Angela. And it's going to end up again in better retention, better performance, just an overall more effective job environment, not only for them, but it's going to have a positive impact on the overall team.
And you're going to have people that have a desire to make things better.
Yes.
They're not punching a clock and watching the clock. I mean, we all have days like that, but they are intrinsically motivated to do everything they can to make the product better.
Exactly. And when we were writing the course, we did a section on top 10 reasons employees stay.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those top 10 was revenue, or was income, for sure. You can't pay somebody half of what they're worth and have them stay forever. That's true. But the other 90% of reasons that we cited, the other 9 out of 10, had nothing to do with that or other perks, and everything to do with alignment between team member and organization. They want to be there, they want to make it better, they want to take pride in what they're doing. That is the part of the conversation that is being missed and holds so much potential as we get it right.
Everybody needs to wake up in the morning with a purpose. This is what I'm here for. I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And if the job isn't meeting that purpose, people are going to move on. That's why turnover is so high.
And let me tell you, again, speaking as somebody who is a social entrepreneur, I'm not bringing somebody onto my team who can't answer the question of why they want to work with me or why they want to work with my organization. I'm not doing it. Whether it's for a board member all the way down to a contractor or an intern, I'm not doing it. But you give me somebody who has the potential to grow and a passion for what we're doing, I will train them, I will mentor them, I will give them every tool I can to help them succeed, because when they become a rock star, they're going to take my organization with them.
Well, here's an irony for you. Wasn't it Steve Jobs that said you can teach skills, but you can't teach attitude?
Exactly.
And if you've read anything about Steve Jobs, you know he was a teensy bit mercurial, but what he said was true.
It is interesting. We talked beforehand about, you know, putting additional stuff in the application that will actually decrease your volume. Why not put in your application, do you use this product or service in your daily life?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me anything about this company you're applying for? Because if you're applying to a company, you haven't even been to their website, or you've never eaten at that restaurant, or you've never bought that product, it's not a disqualifier. But I would be an advocate for putting that resume at the bottom of the list.
How about this one? Have you used our product in the past and stopped using our product? And if so, what would you do to make our product better?
That's
What
good.
would you do to make it so that you know, and it may be that, oh, I lost interest in that hobby. I can no longer afford this nice to have product. But it also may be the product is inaccessible. I would do this, 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 and this to make the product accessible.
That's really good. And yeah, you may whittle your application pool down by 95%. And if you're one of those people who'd rather sift through 500 applications, I guess go for it. But but given that we all value our time to such a degree right now, why not give this kind of approach a try? And we can, if people want to meet with us and discuss particularly how they would phrase it, for their business, you and we're happy to have that conversation with people one-on-one
Oh,
and
absolutely.
customize it for their business. But the general idea of make people show that they care about what you do as a precursor for an interview, that holds.
Yep. Absolutely. And like I said, you're going to get a lot more value out of those employees, even if they can't use Figma.
So, Angela and Daniel, what a great conversation here. What a discussion. And I am now putting in the chat, and we'll also put up on the screen, folks who'd like to have a conversation about their hiring process, right? And how to hire for champions and to be able to implement the things that you've talked about here today on this great webinar, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, very good. And so, just jumping in, wondering any final thoughts?
This is a seismic shift for some folks. And I understand change is hard. People aren't, it is commonly believed that companies hesitate on these things, that they're resisting accessibility or they're resisting inclusion. That is not what people are resisting. People are resisting change. And change is hard. Change is change is difficult. So in our consulting, real life access takes the attitude of, okay, we want you to get to a certain place ultimately, but let's focus first on high impact items and easy wins. So, it'd be unrealistic to jump right into the deep end tomorrow. But even small changes right now can make a big difference and be the momentum which leads to bigger changes later.
I think to
Final
that point,
words. Yeah, thank you.
if you do book a time to speak with Angela or I or both of us, where that conversation probably begins is making sure that you have your positions aligned with your current employees or team members as optimally as possible. Because if we can find a way to shift things around so that you don't have to take on the expense of another team member, all the better. So let's start by looking at what do you want to do, who do you already have, and can we optimize your current resources and talents?
When an employee is underperforming,
Kathleen, there was a question in the chat. Could you read it for me?
Absolutely. And Kwamrul, if you'd like to jump in, feel free, take yourself off mute. But what I'm reading here is, Daniel, does it mean an applicant with a good skill set and knowledge should also know about the complete information about the company? What if the candidate has excellent skills and knowledge, but isn't aware of the company's working process or service? Great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah.
Let
I
me.
don't think that's necessarily disqualifying. I think you take it into consideration, but
Yeah, and I think the point I'm getting at here is if somebody has taken the time to go to the company's website and familiarize themselves with the company's mission, products, and services, that gives you an idea that they're taking that application seriously and that they want to be there. Now, if they haven't done that, I would classify that as maybe a yellow flag. I'd say, okay, maybe they're not really serious about working for you over your competitors. Maybe they didn't find the time or energy to do that research. So, depending on how important research is to that role, you can think about from that way. But the biggest caution I would say is if you run into that situation, they may perform really well for a time, but I would wager somebody a case of a beverage of their choice that that's going to be the first person to jump at a different opportunity if circumstances change or if you don't help them develop a strong why when it comes to staying with you as opposed to going with somebody else.
And you got to take into consideration too. I mean, is this a 6 month position? Because if it is, it won't matter.
Yeah.
Is this and sometimes people grow in the job too. I mean, sometimes people, once they hire on, they develop a passion for what the company does because they familiarize them. They become more familiar with the company. Um, so it's something to be taken into consideration, but it's not immediately disqualifying in my mind.
So what you're really advocating, folks, for, and we're hearing this in what a great discussion. Thank you so much. Is advocating really to move away from transactional hiring to more of connection, people first, and culture
Yep.
hiring. And hiring for
Yes.
champions is really all about that.
It really is, and it's about bringing the human back in, back in hiring. Um, I was thinking before we pivoted there about underperforming. Why is somebody underperforming? And somebody could be underperforming for a number of different reasons. Um, but oftentimes it's misalignment. It's that they're in a role that they're not good at, they've lost confidence. And what do people do when they lose confidence? Oftentimes they bury their head in the sand and they don't want to face the problem. Because they're afraid to get fired. Here's an irony. They're misaligned and they lose confidence and they don't address it because they're afraid they're going to get fired if they do, and so they underperform, which leads you to consider firing them. But before you do, take alignment into consideration. All right. Anything else from the audience? It is.
Angela, that is it. And Daniel, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I put in the chat and also I'll put back on the screen one more time how people can set a time to talk and to discuss these important topics and how to hire for champions and how to hire the best, expect the best, and get the best. How's that? All the way around,
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
the applicants to the organizations to the hiring managers to people leaders, human resources, everyone, and that even customers.
Yep.
The whole ecosystem really benefits when you're hiring for champions, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
with, yeah, go ahead. Any final words before we complete? Such a great and rich conversation.
Absolutely. And let's have a conversation. Let's book some time on the calendar. Kathleen just put in the chat, and let's talk.
Very good. Well, thank you, folks, and more to come. How's that?
3 weeks, we're going to talk about company culture.
Very good. Well, bye for now, folks. Thank you for being here live and also for watching this great replay. More to come. Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Let's hire for champions and make business accessible, right?
They're one and the same. The one is a part of the other.
Great. Thank you.
All right.